Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Open Mainframe Project's monthly webinar. Thank you so much for joining us this month. This month, we're going to cover Zowe, Treat Yourself to a Guided Comprehensive Tour of Zowe Desktop Applications webinar. Our speaker today is Lenny, and now, Lenny, I got nervous, and I'm not going to butcher your last name, so I'll let you introduce yourself. We are recording this, and it will be posted up to our YouTube account later today if you miss any part of it. Also, if you have questions, feel free to ask those in the Q&A box. If you have any technical challenges, go ahead and put those in the chat, and I will address those. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lenny. Lenny, take it away.
Hello, the Open Mainframe Project community. My name is Lenny. I am part of the Zowe Web UI development team. And the purpose of this demo is to showcase a little bit about what the Zowe Desktop is, what are some of our core apps, and what it means to the mainframe industry and open source community. There will be many of you here who know what Zowe is, and I'll try to be respectful with your time. But for those folk who don't, Zowe is an integrated and extensible open source framework for ZOS. Zowe, like Mac OS or Windows, for example, comes with a set of APIs and OS capabilities out of the box with applications built in. So as the mainframe industry continues to mature, it becomes difficult to maintain the same levels of system admins and architectures. Zowe's goal is to offer a modern interface to interact with ZOS, similar to what one could experience on cloud platforms today. So a good question may be, who are the intended users? Well, one of those users is me, right? I'm not a mainframe expert, and I lack the years of experience in this industry to know the ins and outs of ISPF or, TSO commands like the back of my hand. I certainly can't program in Rex, right? Let's be honest. Who's this mumbling buffoon up on the main stage talking about Z? But I do know web development. I know REST APIs, right? I know open source. And I can work with the tools and environments that modern programming has to offer me. And that means together, we can bring ZOS to the center stage for newcomers, decrease costs, and drive adoption for the future. Zowe is also intended for experienced admins and system programmers too. Not everyone wants change, and that's okay. But Zowe's mission is about keeping what works and extending it, as well as adding completely new features, which will power, the healthcare agencies, banks, insurance companies, governments, and every other major data-centered industry for decades to come. Zowe is a growing community and consists of more components than just the desktop we'll discuss today. But if you're at all interested, I would highly recommend visiting zowe.org and checking out our many community channels like Slack, for example. So we know what Zowe is about, right? But how in the world is it accomplishing the things that I've said? Well, the desktop provides a web UI containing a number of apps and features with functions which make ZOS more accessible and intuitive. For today, we'll be discussing 4 apps that come with base Zowe, including the Zowe Editor, which is an IDE-like experience for interacting with files and datasets on the mainframe. The Jez Explore, an application used to view and work with jobs. Third, the TN3270 terminal, which emulates the functions of an IBM 3270 machine. And finally, the VT terminal, a mainframe emulator for SSH and Telnet. We may have a few questions already, and I will love your questions, but please feel free to wait until after the demo, just so we have time to showcase some of the cool things I would like to show. So let's begin by logging in. From the start, we are greeted with our desktop. We see our pinned apps in the bottom left. We see desktop utilities in our app tray to the bottom right, things like notifications, which can be sent in multiple ways, i.e. by apps to notify the user of something important, by an administrator to send a message to all signed in desktop users in an instance, etc. We'll quickly open up a tutorial app and send one now. There we go. We also have system widgets, which contain support for changing languages. And this list will grow in the future. Changing your TSO password. And of course, visually personalizing the desktop. Like, for example, changing element size for accessibility, or say, a tablet device. Date, time, etc. So here's my list of installed Zowe apps. There are many out there. These are just the ones I had on my local setup. But beginning with the second app, let's launch the editor. So the editor allows me to view files and folders. If we right-click a folder node, we can refresh its content. We can also change its Unix permissions on the go. We can set recursive or not. We can also expand files and folders. And we can view file content. So for example, I have this shell script here. So open the languages tab. You get syntax highlighting for tons of languages. And this list is also extensible. Right. Open the preferences menu, and you get editor settings that we can change. So we have all the capabilities of a modern editor, right? Exhibit A, I'll change the font size maybe to make it slightly more pleasing for a demo. Exhibit B, I'll use a hotkey, see Alt-N, there we go, to create a new file. Then we can save. We specify file name and encoding, right? This is the mainframe after all, right? We specify encodings in this part of town. We click save. Looks like it's saved, and we can close it. Now we can view the properties of the file that we just saved. Like created time, our mode, etc. We can also delete. And there we go, it's gone. All right, so now let's say you hate this, right? Give me my putties. Give me my SSH terminals. There's nothing wrong with that. This is where the VT terminal comes in. Here we can view our host, port, and type, right? I will log in as myself. And I'll go ahead and view directories, right? And now we have the same context, but maybe in a way that we are more comfortable with. I'll go ahead and navigate to a folder that we want to delete maybe. Let's see, what was it called? For Andy to delete. And maybe we'll delete this one. Oh, that's right. It's a folder. It's not a file. And we'll see that change has now been updated in our editor. We can also, we also have other menu functions in the editor. We can also create folders. Let's see, we'll create a folder here. We'll call it, new folder. We have a new folder here. We'll go back to our editor. We right click, we refresh, and there's our new folder. We've got a quick search filter. For example, we'll do Alt-P, and now we can search. Right, so we can use hotkeys to traverse the tabs, right? We could also do we can close all, we can undo, etc. Right? I'm not gonna all of the functionality of a modern editor. And these are all features afforded to us through a modern interface, right? The editor is a community project, and contributors from all over add code, whether student or organization. Now on to data sets. So let's search up some JCL data sets and their members. Oh yeah, I had a huge list here. Took a little while. So let's maybe open up this one. We'll open up this member. And just like we saw with USS, we can right click to view its properties. Similar to what we have in USS. For example, this properties view tells us the record length, record format, right, block size, and other data set characteristics, right? Some of which are not easily accessible in a one-stop shop like this. Maybe your users aren't completely sure what it means for a data set to be blocked, right? That's fine. We have a hyperlink. That leads us to an IBM help page that can assist with that. One small example. But however, right, as with my previous example, let's say you hate this too, and that's okay, right? Maybe it's not as feature complete as you would have liked. It's an ongoing free app in development after all. Maybe you can do things faster on ISPF, or at least ISPF is what you prefer because that's what you're comfortable with. And that leads us to our third app, the TN3270. So if we open our settings at the top, similar to VT, we can view the host, the port, and other settings like the code page. So I'll go ahead and log in. Type in my password. And now we're in ISPF. So I could, for example, go to 3.4 to view my data sets. We'll search the same ones that we searched for in the editor. Right, JCL lib. And then we'll open up the same member. So here we have side-by-side views, right, of different contexts that we can interact with Z data, right? So I'm not an ISPF wizard, so I can't showcase all of what that has to offer, but nonetheless, we can do it all in our TN3270 app. Additionally, I'd like to showcase some more core desktop features. So for example, when we right-click an app on the launch bar, say the editor, a context menu appears, right? We can select properties to view the version and the app ID. These can be useful from an administration perspective for managing Zowe apps, perhaps allotted to a team of engineers, right, by a manager or IT specialist, maybe at a bank that uses ZOS. We also have standalone mode. Here, we'll do the TN3270 this time. We'll right-click, and we'll select Open in New Browser tab. So now we have an emulator environment that's maybe more comfortable to some, but still offers the benefits of being on the Zowe Desktop. So we also have some app-to-app features. So I'm going to go back to our desktop, and then we're going to exit our full screen mode because this is in a browser. And we know what our URL is for our desktop. Let's see, we have some UI from the presenting blocking it, but that's okay. You guys can see it probably. So now if we navigate to our full screen app, we can see how that UI has changed, right? So let's take that a step further. So for example, here, we have an editor app, and then we're going to use app to app to say, I want to launch a terminal app on top of that. And what do we want to launch it with? We want to launch it with this set of data, right? So we'll log in. And there we have our editor app being launched with 3270 using app to app. Right? We could also do, let's say if we wanted to open our editor, but our origin maybe came from a hyperlink, right? Maybe a website of yours or a product that refers to a file in USS. So that means we would need a URL that spawns the editor, but also plops us directly into a specific USS path, right, to open the file that we want to open. There are many possibilities here. The app-to-app framework is also extensible, right? And the features that we have are growing from Zowe release to release. So we're going to go ahead and navigate back to our desktop. And for the final app of this demo, let's try to do some things with jobs, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll navigate back to the editor and search for a job that I can run. I have a very simple one here in ts3105.dev.jcllib. There we go. We can use our search history, right, to find things quicker. Let's open it. Here's our simple job. Now, using the JCL menu, I can now click Submit, and this job will get submitted. So let's navigate to our fourth app that we wanted to show, which is our JES Explorer. Along with submitting jobs via the editor, I can also submit a job here. So when we open the JES Explorer, we are greeted with a view of my currently filtered jobs, right? So if we click the top left for example, we can change our filter based on what we need to view. This one is good for me now, right? Let's see, I'll right click maybe a previous job that was running. Let's see, yeah, I ran that today. So we'll click on this one and we will right click it. We are going to select Get JCL and we can rerun that job. It looks like that job with this ID has been submitted. 9-3, the last two numbers. Okay. Looks like there it is. And there it is, our job that we just ran at 11:21. Convenient way to keep track of time as well. That's perfect. Anyhow, so if we right click, we can also download. So we'll right click this and we can download our logs to our desktop, right? So for viewing later. And as an admin, I can download this log if I need to, or I can purge the job as well. Purge request succeeded, perfect. So if the job was running, I could also right click cancel it. All of the kind of essentials that you'd need for handling jobs. And that about concludes my demo for today. There are plenty more things that I could show. We could get into maybe some more things on the 3270 side, on the terminal. Let's see, let's change our language, right? Wouldn't that be interesting if I just did the whole presentation in Chinese, for example? We'll restart, etc. Right? We get it. So that concludes my demo. I'd like to formally begin the QA section, the question and answer section. Zowe offers many more apps that I don't have time to show here, but this is where it gets its value, right? From interested developers, users, and consumers. So if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And if I can't, I'll try to reach out to the sources I need to get you the answer. And if we have any time, maybe I'll try to show more stuff.
Great. We do have a couple of questions. Sean has been gracious enough to answer some in the background. So let's see. What are the host requirements for the desktop?
What are the host requirements for the desktop?
Yep.
I'm not really sure, like, what is the question referring to? Could the person elaborate? I mean, we have our host here, right? We have our host, which is localhost. That's because I'm running this instance of the Zowe Desktop on my local machine. But we could, for example, run it on ZOS, right? Maybe one of our systems here at Rocket. So the host would then say something like, RS, and then the number of our system, .rocketsoftware.com. Let's see, we have some in the chat.
Yeah, so he answered, what do I need to install on ZOS host for the desktop to work?
Right, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. I was thinking of something different. Yeah, the host in this case is Windows, right? Windows is what I'm on. And our supported browsers are, let's see, we have Chrome, we have Safari, we have Edge, and we have Firefox. Right, like Sean added, on ZOS, you need USS, some RACF profiles to set up, and in most cases, ZOSMF. That's right. Yeah. So for our authentication, right, to log into our desktop for the accounts that we use, that's what we need. I'm not up to date with chat here. I think there's other things. Give me a moment. Oh, wow, there's a few messages. Okay. So, yeah, here's a good point that I want to point out from Sean, right? The desktop that you see is in the web browser. So, it's not necessary to have a client-side installation to use the desktop, right? That's pretty huge. What that means is it doesn't have to be hardware dependent, right? If you have it running somewhere, then a user could log on to that desktop from their browser, given that they know the host and the port. Right. We talk a little bit about the editor, right? It's not a full-blown IDE, but it's based on Monaco, right? So if anyone knows about Microsoft's Monaco editor, very similar to VS Code. Let me navigate through here and see if we have, okay, so can we use Zoe in our system using the web browser? Right, we answer that. Okay, Sean answering some more questions. So I have a ZOS system and my users want to use Zoe. How did the users launch Zoe to get to the mainframe? We answer that. Perfect. Okay, and looks like that's the end of the list for questions. So I'm open to new questions if people have them. Okay, it looks like maybe no questions for now. So maybe I'll add a few things, maybe a few more details that wasn't intended in the original user presentation. We could talk maybe a bit about the actual things behind the scenes, right? What are the frameworks that Zoe supports, right? We know what Zoe is, we see the desktop and we see apps, but how do those things happen? And the apps right now are going to be in Angular, they're going to be in React, and they're going to be in iframe. And we have various sample apps, right? We like to call sample apps. They are tutorial apps that showcase the capabilities of a certain framework. In the beginning of the presentation, I used our iframe sample app to send a notification, for example. These are the things that will help, hopefully, help grow the community, help the onboarding process, and help interested developers if they would like to develop their own apps on Zoe or bring existing web page-like apps to Zoe, right? We offer iframe support, so that means we can embed a web page within an app. And that means that if someone did have a web page that they wanted to add, they could do that packaged as an app with not too much effort involved. We have a notification in the chat. Oh yeah, okay. So I showed off some JCL highlighting, but I didn't show some Rex highlighting. I don't remember the exact data set, Sean. Could you send me the exact data set? I'll open it up in the editor now. I think it was TSSPG. Oh, was it this one? It might have been this one. Okay. Yes, perfect. So here we have some recs. There we go. I'll briefly scroll through. And as I said previously in the demo, our list for supported languages is growing. A lot of these are taken directly from the ones that are built into Monaco, but the languages dominant in the mainframe, for example, like JCL, like Rex, these are ones that we had to, we had to build the highlighting from the ground up, right? We had to use, if we want to go technical regex, right, and things like that, we had to use pattern matching to create the highlighting ourselves. Lionel asked, does the highlighting expose syntax errors? Sean Grady is typing an answer because I'm trying to remember. It's fairly new. Well, let's try to do something wrong, right? We have our string here. So we can see that right off the bat, it's not recognizing this as a string. We have, I'm not a Rex expert, right? I'm not going to embarrass some of the Rex experts maybe that are on this call, but I know at least from a basic level, we have certain pattern matching that says this is what it should be, right? We have our calls, we have our conditionals, and this is what it shouldn't be. So we have it at a basic level. Maybe Sean can talk about the details because he worked on it. Sorry, can't give you a more advanced answer.
Yeah, so can you hear me all right?
We can, yeah.
Sure. So the editor that you see here is based upon Monaco, and Monaco allows for syntax highlighting, linting, and I think a little bit more advanced stuff like potentially debugging via what they call language server protocol. So the capability to do a lot is there, but we're kind of attacking this one thing at a time. So we don't have linting support for Rex yet. It's just the syntax highlighting. However, since Monaco is capable of so much, we're happy to collect feedback on what everyone thinks is interesting so that we can prioritize our backlog of future enhancements to make. One of the important parts of Zowe being open source is that you get your voice heard. So if you want to see something cool, just let the community know. And if you want to participate and help make something happen, if you have particular expertise in something that isn't covered yet, we'd love to hear that too. It's an open source community, so anyone's welcome to give feedback as well as to contribute if they'd like.
Absolutely. Yeah, we should definitely reference the awesome community that we have. If we navigate to zoe.org, we'll see, for example, the Slack communication channels that we have. And we have channels depending on maybe the questions that you have or the help that you need from a development standpoint, all different channels for different asks that you might have. in the Zoe community.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you want to share with us today, Lenny?
Not for today. I think let's see, we showcased the desktop. We talked a little bit about what it's trying to accomplish. We showcased some of the core apps. I think things are good on my end. I'll probably give a few more minutes for questions to come in, but maybe Sean has some other things to say. I could, demo from my end, but I think we got through the gist.
Great. All right, if anybody has any last minute questions, go ahead and type those in. We'll give you a minute or two to oh, here we go. Can this be used to provide a desktop interface to an application instead of running an ISPF dialog?
Can this be used to provide it? Yes. Well, it's a pretty generic question, so I'm not sure like a specific use case that you have in mind. But
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
go ahead. Sean.
That's the good thing about the desktop is it has a generic answer to generic questions too, right? The thing is, the desktop is not only what Lenny showed, it's also a framework for building programs on top of. So if there's something that you want to do in the desktop that you didn't see today, and you have a particular vendor product that you know and love, you can always ask that company, hey, will you Zoe enable your product? Because, I mean, half of what we do in the community is we help people Zoe enable their products or make new products upon Zoe. So you can definitely make an interface in the desktop that is an alternative to what you might see in ISPF or translates what you see in ISPF. The whole Zoe ecosystem has tools like REST APIs and WebSockets, and even has a server that's specifically meant to do low-level system calls. And all of this is pluggable. So no matter by what means, you can indeed get the data up to the web browser and visualize in the desktop.
It looks like I did miss one of Lionel's questions, which was, I was thinking I'd like to run a program that generates data that that can be run from within a Zoe Desktop app without running a job, but run directly. So I'm not sure whether this answers your question, but something that comes to mind for me would be the VT terminal. So for example, if I open up VT and I log in as my user, I could, for example, run a shell script that I have here, right? I think we showed one previously, right? I had that kill Zoe script. Don't want to run it here now, obviously, because then we would shut down our Zoe instance, but that is something that I could do from the terminal. We could also use app to app to do the same thing. I don't remember whether we have it working now or whether we just have the framework to make it work. But we could, for example, launch VT in a context by itself, and then use app-to-app parameters to launch a script for it to start. Maybe like we launch the editor to plop open with a file, like we did here. that's one example that comes to mind. Maybe people have other examples.
Alrighty, it looks like we are out of questions. I want to thank you so much, Lenny, for your presentation today. This was super informative and very interesting. Any final parting words for our audience?
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for Lionel for firing off these questions. That's awesome. Active contributor. But anyway, yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for your time. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching the demo, seeing what the desktop has to offer, seeing the cool things that we're working on. And that's that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lenny. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This will be available on YouTube at the end of the day, and be sure to join us next month for our monthly Open Mainframe Project webinar. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.